Gabe, we're so excited and proud and thankful that you took time out of your busy schedule to visit with us and our ALS Texas community. Thank you. To help us jump into the conversation, could you tell us a little bit about yourself now, what you're doing, what you're up to, and your personal journey with ALS?
Hi, Tanya. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. I want to start off by thanking you for all the important work that you do, and thanking all the families for being here today. My story with ALS started a couple of years ago. In 2017, my dad was diagnosed. As you guys know, he had symptoms before, but he was diagnosed in 2017 and continued progressing quickly with the disease until he passed away this year in March. During that time, my dad, of course, left his job. My mom left her job to take care of him, and I went to college. So our lives fundamentally changed because of his diagnosis. And even now, a few months after he passed away, I'm getting the scope that when your loved one has ALS, your life will never be the same. And that's really the best way that I can kind of summarize what the ALS journey has been for my family.
When I met with you last year, we were developing our programs for young adults, youth, and children. Sadly and unfortunately, we didn't have that when you were going through this journey, and we've had conversations since then. And even with the young leaders that are organizing now to connect with young adults and teens, and even elementary school kids involved in the experience, I've heard you all say many times, we wish that we had this then or earlier on. And so that's something that we have been so passionately working on developing and launching. And we've heard that's an unmet need, along with, you mentioned, I don't want to say it's a burden, but the commitment. It is the never ending commitment. And we've had, you and I, a couple of conversations about that too. And how much time, and I think it's important for everybody today who may not have experience, although many on today's call are very well aware of the commitment of a caregiver at any age. But how much time would you say you as a teenager, because how old were you again when your dad was diagnosed?
My dad was diagnosed November 14, 2017. I had just turned 17 as well. I turned 17 in October. From 2017 to August of 2019, so a bit more than 2 years, I was very involved in my dad's day-to-day caregiving. I was in high school, so he was diagnosed. He began presenting symptoms my sophomore year, diagnosed junior year. And so I was with him for junior and senior year of high school. When he first started developing symptoms, he could stay at home unsupervised for some time. Also, I'm gonna pause here for a second to say something. I've kind of developed a habit of speaking about everything that happened with my dad in an almost clinical, callous way. And I apologize if that's off-putting, but it's just kind of a way that I am able to discuss everything without kind of breaking down. So I don't mean to sound so kind of cold about it. It's just the only way I can do it. But going back, yeah, when he was able to stay at home alone for some periods of time, he still needed help with his PEG tube. So I had to make sure that I got home on time so that I could give him his isosource feedings. And when I got home, so that was, I'd say about junior year, I would get home, I would feed him, and he would be in a chair, and so I'd help him move out of the chair, go to somewhere else he wanted to be at, and I would stay with him. I had early release from school, so I'd get off school at about 1, make sure to get home as quickly as I could, and I'd stay with him until 6 when my mom got home from work, and she would take over caring for him then. So in the beginning, it was, I'd say, 4 hours or so, because he also needed help kind of going to the bathroom, picking him up and stuff like that. So it's about 4 hours. And then, of course, as things deteriorated, it became just completely untenable for him to be left alone. So at that point, my mom left her work, and that's when I became more involved, because before I was giving him feedings through the PEG tube and helping him with the cough assist and moving him a little bit, but he could still be left alone. After he lost the ability to completely walk, that's when my mom had to stay home, and at which point it's less relevant to talk about the number of hours that I spent with him. Just kind of, if I was at home, I was, next to my dad.
Every day in all of our clinics, we have 11 multidisciplinary clinics that the ALS Texas chapter helps support throughout the state. We have a lot of clinical conversations, like you said. It's the facts of the medical facts. Here's what's happening with your breathing. Here's what's happening with the muscles in your arm. You could go down the list. Mm-hmm. What doesn't happen as often, and it's becoming more so, and we're really trying to bring that conversation to light as much as we can, is the emotional trauma. The trauma that begins actually before diagnosis. There's a journey usually to get to diagnosis of ups and downs and praying that that's not what it is. I had a young man tell me before he received his second confirmation of the diagnosis, I was praying for anything. I was praying that it was cancer before I found out ALS.
That happened to us too. We were praying for a brain tumor of all things.
Yeah. And that, to hear something of that tells you the magnitude of this disease and the impact for the family. The emotional trauma, that is a journey of its own. And the impact on stress levels and physical and overall well-being for everybody. You as a 17-year-old, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, could you let us into that world a little bit of you as a teenager and how it impacted you and your emotional and overall well-being?
Yes. Strangely enough, it didn't impact me so much when my dad was still with us. My mom and I, we were both his primary caregivers, and of course, he started getting sick, and like you mentioned, so many of us went through this roller coaster of, oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. My dad had a misdiagnosis, and then of course the diagnosis. And as we saw him go through all of these emotional ups and downs and depression, my mom and I knew that we had to do our best to stay strong. So we grieved in private and kept to ourselves the best we could. As his disease progressed and he was unable to do so many things, and we became more involved in his caregiving, our grief, our trauma took a complete backseat. By the time he was bedbound and, you know, he lived in a hospital bed in our living room, my mom and I, we had, you know, we would go behind his bed to cry so that he couldn't see that we were crying. And, you know, we would, you know, cry really quickly, you know, finish crying and then get back to what he needs. My mom will tell you that when she was working, she would drive home from work and she'd cry the entire way. And then she got home and she'd put on a strong face. I just didn't deal with it. I almost compartmentalized that. We did the absolute best we could to be strong for my dad.
But it's understanding that big picture and that the emotions, there's not time, and it's almost like you've removed yourself from that situation, and don't have time to think about it. And it affects your friendships, your relationships. If you can be in clubs and sports, you know, do you have time for that? Are you physically and emotionally able to do that?
Yeah, Tanya, you're absolutely right. Two things come to mind. Sometimes, you know, it's said that in moments of crisis, people don't deal with it emotionally just because, you know, they have to do something right now. I think like all families with ALS, we had the same thing. We it was like we were in a war or something. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. It's a daily battle.
It was all hands on deck, you know. So in fact, you know, your own home doesn't resemble what it used to be. Like you mentioned, you know, we had a hospital bed in our living room, a bed next to that, and a bed in the room next to that. And you know, the room I slept in was lined with medical supplies, and you knew what to do. You knew you had okay, you're gonna clean the suction machine. You're gonna clean the suction the tracheostomy. You're gonna do all of these things, and you're gonna do them every day, and you're going to keep doing that as long as you physically can, because that's what has to be done. So it goes to the point that you forget about a lot of things, emotions foremost among them, but also other relationships and other bits of everyday life that you previously thought were important. Kind of reshapes your scope. And instead of worrying about, well, I mean, you're still going to worry about everything, but you're going to be working on really one or two things. And that's what happened to my mom and I, and that's what happened to me in regards to schools and clubs and friendships and all that.
What words of empowerment and support do you have for young caregivers today, especially teens and those nearing or college age or in college? Because that's your journey now. You're in college, and I've heard some of your plans for the future And I'm planning on watching where the journey takes you for sure. But what would you say to young caregivers right now that are in the ALS experience?
I have a difficult time, Tanya, with this because I would like to say that, and it's certainly true, you're going to be a remarkably strong individual. But the fact is that what we go through makes it unable to be worth it.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be honest. There's very little that your parent or your loved one going through ALS will bring that is positive. For young caregivers, I really wish I could tell you that there's some sort of there's some sort of something that makes it a little bit worth it, but what that is very little. So the truth is, it's going to be hard. It's going to be very, very hard. And when all is said and done, it's still going to hurt. It's still going to be extraordinarily painful. The only personal solace that I can genuinely give you is that you are going to be remarkably able to connect with other human beings. Having gone through what we all go through with ALS, we emerge with a sense of pain that makes us more empathetic and makes us feel closer to other people. I will never, I'll never lose sight of how much I love my mom. I'm never going to lose sight of how much I love my dad. When, you know, a friend comes up to me and tells me, you know, oh my God, my dad's sick, I can really relate to them and I can tell them things that are important and things that help them. That's the only thing that I can tell you that you will emerge from the ALS experience with that is good. As young caregivers, we have hopefully a long life ahead of us. And I think you're going to find that alongside your peers, you enjoy it more than them. You're going to enjoy, it's going to be bittersweet, but you're going to enjoy walking and talking and eating more than they ever are. You're going to enjoy, you know, having a family and having people you love more than they ever will. And when other people are suffering, you're going to be able to help them more than anybody else will as well. So that's the support and encouragement that I can give you. Now, again, it won't make up for the horrible suffering that ALS brings on you, but it is something that's real and genuine.
Gabe, I and we, but speaking personally, can't thank you enough for, again, letting us into such a personal journey that I believe everybody that's joining us today is going to be able to relate to not only specific parts, but the entire experience. Mm-hmm. And what you've shared about our empathy for other human beings and how we, you know, it has changed not taking things for granted and how it shapes you as a person in a way that you would never want anything to shape you. Thank you for using your experience, sharing your experience on a platform and being a friend and an advocate and warrior for others that might share a similar journey. I truly am honored to walk alongside you. When I met you and others and our team every day, that's what I talk a lot about, purpose and why we wake up in the morning, why we truly wake up. And everybody in our team wakes up to, number one, work to create a world without ALS. And until that happens, to do all we can to support every family in Texas. I am excited also, as I've been talking to you and a few of the other young leaders that we have that have said, we want to use this experience to help others and to connect. I'm going to share with this audience today that I know you personally and others too, when I have called you and said, I know of a teenager that would love to connect. All of you have said, let them have my contact, let him have my contact information so that they know that they're not alone. And that's what today does too. It helps young caregivers know that you're not alone, that there's others that get it. Again, they get something that nobody should ever have to get, but they get it. And I am hopeful. I am excited about the support in 2021 that we are talking about for young adults and teens, and wanted to give you an opportunity to say anything else too before we wrap up today's discussion and allow some time for questions and conversation and connecting.
Well, thank you, Tanya, for putting this here together. I want to reiterate your point there, that young caregivers aren't alone. We are few and far between, no doubt about it. You're probably not going to find too many people around you who can relate. But you aren't alone. And I think that if you are a young caregiver out there, I would encourage you to reach out. We're going to be starting a little, we're going to be starting like a weekly Zoom call of young caregivers coming up in January, and we would like you to be a part of it. As you know, the ALS journey looks different for everybody and every family. It looks different for every young caregiver, but there are some things that are really important to be able to talk to somebody about. College applications, friendships, relationships, finances. These are all issues that young caregivers go through, and it's hard to find actual advice from somebody who gets it. So I encourage you to reach out. Tanya is going to send out some information in the next couple of months, and you know, always feel free to reach out directly to Tanya, and she'll put you in touch with me. If anybody wants to reach out, I please do that. And that's about it. But thank you guys for being a part of this. And I'm sorry about, I'm sorry, but you're not alone.
Gabe, thank you so much. Again, we know that there's at least 2,500 young caregivers in our state. I know when we hear that number, it's overwhelming. It's unbelievable. And to let each of those know that they're not alone. And we thank you for that. And we thank you for being a part of that crucial connection and support.